Hello and welcome. How to give stuff up, deal with addictions. That's not necessarily the theme of the talk today, but a bhikkhu is the Pali word meaning homeless, mendicant, a renunciant, someone who has given up the household life, all of their worldly goods, including their friends, associates and family, to rely on the support of others by means of alms. That is what's given freely out of the generosity of people's hearts, just to support you in your bare necessities, your basic needs in life: food, clothing, shelter and medicine, and nothing more. So what people are often asking is, how did you give up this? How did you give up that? Really in relation to how they can deal with their own addictions, how they can give up stuff. There are two ways of looking at it. There are probably many ways of looking at it, but in the black and white sense, the weaning off approach with lots of support, or the so-called cold turkey approach with, well, there's little support that can be given. And the renunciant's life is one of choice, and that is the choice to give up the worldly life in favour of the samana's life, the wanderer's life, the homeless alms mendicant life, a bhikkhu. So a samana is not so much a religious seeker looking to acquire, but one whom has accepted, in the sense of Buddhism, the teachings of the Buddha to show us how to acquire those answers, how to see and realize enlightenment through a practice, beginning with morality and inclusive of renunciation, giving up our attachments, seeing in his enlightenment the liberation that came from the very ascetic life he was leading for 6 years prior to his enlightenment, of having left his life of relative luxury, eating little, very next to nothing on occasions, a very harsh approach that he ultimately found to be too harsh and unnecessary and the creator of additional suffering. But mostly what people are asking me here is how to give up this and how to give up that, which are not vital for life, not vital to sustain a comfortable existence in this lifetime. For instance, giving up smoking, giving up alcohol, giving up drugs, giving up using, games and such like on the internet for entertainment to a degree that it's affecting your interaction with the rest of the world in your life. These kind of problems, once given up, are not going to affect your physical health or mental well-being. In fact, most likely will improve your physical health and mental well-being, albeit we still continue to indulge in such activities. So the alms mendicant, the bhikkhu, the renunciant's life, takes the principle of renunciation and clarifies it for the bhikkhu, and defines this life as a monk or a nun, a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, as something different to that of a lay practitioner in Buddhism, an upasika, a Buddhist man or Buddhist lady, keeping 8 precepts, practicing meditation and developing wisdom, but still living a comfortable, reasonable household life, even a luxurious, very comfortable existence is not prohibitive towards progress on the path towards enlightenment. But when one is looking at things that are distracting us from that path towards enlightenment, we often say, well, if only I was to give this up, give that up, my progress would be faster and it would be more successful. I'm more likely to attain to arahantship if I'm not spending all of my time at the local bar, or listening to music, or playing games, or smoking, taking drugs, for instance. So on this realization, you ask, how do you do that? How do we do it? Cold turkey, or do we wean ourselves off? In my experience, the only approach is where one is not physically, or even, I expect, to some degree, mentally dependent on something, in which case you must take medical advice, appropriate professional direction. But where that is not the case, it's just an indulgence, you should go cold turkey, just stop. Because anything other than that, weaning oneself off, is merely keeping hold of attachment to that activity. And also, it is giving something up that you clearly don't want to give up because you haven't yet seen the benefits of giving that up. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask the question, should I wean myself off? Should I just gradually reduce this activity to zero? When we approach the giving up of such activities from the point of view of wisdom, the wisdom the Buddha gives us, and seeing that we can, as lay practitioners even, once a month, twice a month, once a week, or more often, if time allows it for you or circumstances allow it, extend your 5 precepts to 8 precepts, the additional 3 being of a renunciant nature as opposed to moral virtues, just not eating in the afternoon, refraining from entertainment, beautification, perfumes, and lazing around on luxury furniture. Taking those additional precepts is a progress towards developing the quality, and it is a quality, one of the 7 factors of enlightenment, of nekama, renunciation. Renunciation is a very big part of the practice, and it isn't renunciation for renunciation's sake. It isn't a macho thing. Oh, I only sit on the floor, I only sleep for 4 hours, and I only eat 1 meal a day. Aren't I cool? It isn't that. We see the benefits. So taking the comment that prompted me to speak about this before moving on to the rest of your comments today and questions, someone asked, when I began to eat once a day and just in the morning, did I gradually approach this or do it all at once? Initially, I stayed in a monastery where this was a necessity. You had the option perhaps of an earlier meal and then a mid-morning main meal and no more food thereafter. So certainly no food eating after noon, in fact for most of the late morning and the rest of the day. And I opted to go with the 1 meal a day practice on my short stay in a monastery on that occasion, and found it very liberating. Now this had come from previous experiences of giving things up. I used to drink alcohol, I used to go out a lot, listen to music a lot, I used to smoke cigarettes and what have you, quite a lot. If you could do something a lot, I did it a lot. And I found that the giving up of those things, and yes, going cold turkey with the giving up of those things, was tremendously liberating. I wasn't losing anything out. They were not contributing to my well-being in any sense. They were just distracting me from what might well have been causing me suffering, or distracting me from seeing dukkha clearly for what it is, impermanent, and really not so difficult to deal with if you don't keep adding fuel to that dukkha, fuel to that suffering, by additional fanning of its source, the fire of desire. So something like drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes is ultimately trying to satisfy an unquenchable thirst, an insatiable desire. And although we know this, we ignore this fact. But if you look at the positive sides of giving something up, you'll see there are no positive sides in maintaining that habit. It is just a habit. And the positive, therefore, far outweighs any negatives you can find in continuing this habit. But this isn't just theoretical. The minute you stop smoking, health benefits aside, because actually when you stop smoking you probably feel less healthy. You'll probably have a cough, you'll probably be wheezing. It's quite difficult. But the benefits in not having to think about smoking, not having to, even if it's what you're thinking about all of the time, oh, I wish I could smoke, I wish I could smoke, you know you don't have to actually action on those thoughts. And therefore you don't have to go about the process of buying the cigarettes to smoke, or making the cigarettes to smoke, or funding, having the money available to purchase those cigarettes in the first place, or having the work to do to earn the money to actually be able to afford to buy those cigarettes in the first place. It's immediately and tremendously liberating. And you thrive on that liberation. You dwell in that liberation. You give one thing up at a time and appreciate it, although it's difficult, how positive that feeling of freedom from that habit is. You can go in any restaurant all of a sudden. You don't have to find one that has little ashtrays on a table outside. I gave up smoking in that betwixt time when it was an okay thing to do still in my country. I think now it's quite a taboo thing to do and I wouldn't have survived or coped very well as a smoker, it being something that you were sent to the end of the path to do with a few other unsavoury characters or something like that. When I was smoking, when I was drinking, it was the thing to do. Everybody did it. But even so, it was expensive. It required time. It required associating with a certain kind of person, people, like-minded, whom were not necessarily thinking of ever giving up these, what are we know now, unwholesome habits, indeed. But it's only through the actual action of no longer doing these things that we see clearly how liberating it is and the benefits of it. And of course, you all know the long-term benefits of these things. The same with not drinking. It's not so clear with things like entertainment and beautification, but these can come along later because you will find eventually, as bhikkhus find eventually, you really do start to run out of things that you can give up. And you might search around a little bit in your food bowl, for instance, seeing something that you rather like. Well, I'm just not going to eat that today. I'll give that to someone else. Because you're looking for something to renounce. Because there is this tremendous bonus, this high you get from renunciation, this feeling of, I left that because I didn't need it, I just wanted it. But someone else has benefited from it greatly. And that aside, just the pushing it aside alone, the liberation, the freedom from that is enough. So on that question, did I give up eating in the morning and then never eat again? Well, I stayed in a monastery for a few times, experienced the freedom and liberation for not having to think about lunch, not having to think about evening meals, and then certainly not being able or having to think about all of the other snacks and meals one might cram in between. Grazing. as we go through our days. Seeing or experiencing that in the monastery environment where there was little, well, no choice, I only saw positives in it. So it was very easy for me after that experience to continue with it, because I was determined to keep 8 precepts. So in that sense, yes, I went cold turkey and didn't really experience any negative feelings as a result of it. And now 10 years later, I don't eat anything in the afternoon. There are certain few allowables I've mentioned in the past, but even so, if they weren't available, it isn't an issue. And really, those allowables are not very interesting. They're for medicinal purposes only. So the thought of food after this time of day is something that never really enters my mind. The feeling of hunger, perhaps if you're working hard in a monastery, there's some duties to be done, is not real hunger. We can live for a good few days without food. It's more desire and wanting food. Now, of course, there are people with medical conditions, and again, I must repeat, you must seek medical advice, professional medical advice, if you have any conditions with regard to that particular issue of renunciation, food. But there are so many other things that you don't need to. You don't need to drink or take intoxicants. You don't need to smoke cigarettes. Although there are serious health issues with smoking cigarettes, they're not necessarily, or they're not considered as intoxicants with regards to the 5 precepts. Neither is nicotine, coffee. So these are stimulants, but not intoxicants, whereas alcohol and marijuana are very much intoxicants. They dull the mind and make you less mindful or heedless, and therefore more likely to break the other 4 precepts, which is the real main point of having the anchor of this 5th precept of refraining from intoxicants. But it's okay to have a little bit of black coffee in the afternoon or something like that to keep you awake. But a bhikkhu's life is about renunciation. As I said, we are not religious seekers going out wandering the planet looking for the answers, because the Buddha has provided us with the answers in the Dharma. We can get this from the suttas. But within those, we're taught how to live a way that is 100% dedicated towards that practice, to realize enlightenment, to follow the path towards arahantship as directly as possible. And for that, he recommends ordained life. Firstly, samanera, where you take on a good deal of precepts over and above the 8 or 10 precepts of living in a monastery. And then bhikkhu life, the alms mendicant, where you take a good many more precepts, 227, which are all supportive of those core precepts of doing no harm, but most of which are of a renunciant nature. And you begin to develop the new habit to replace the old habits, the habit of renunciation, nekama, which is a quality that enables us to let go of other things. Let go, for instance, of personality view, thinking that this physical body and this thinking brain is what we are. Let go of that, letting go of ego. Let go of rites and rituals, ceremonies we may religiously go through time and time again, thinking they're doing us benefit, bringing us good fortune, good luck. They may be wholesome, mindful activities, but should be considered only as such. No such activities bring benefits or good luck or good fortune. However beautiful the flowers you put on the shrine, however many candles and incense you burn, what is going to change your life within this lifetime and future rebirths are your actions of body, speech and mind that are directly contributory towards that path towards enlightenment. Understanding, developing wisdom through the practice of samadhi, developing samadhi through the practice of mindfulness, keeping the precepts to support that practice. These actions are what drive us in the right direction towards enlightenment and take us in that direction happily. Because if it is not enjoyable, we'll at some point take a different direction or even a U-turn. If you get really fed up on a journey when you're going somewhere and you don't really have to go there, the likelihood is you'll turn around and go back home. And going back home in this sense would be going back to old habits, going back to old ways, going back to your comfort zone, what you've become used to leaning on, the crutches of life, the odd glass of wine, the odd cigarette, the going to the bar to meet the friends and the watching of the movies or the box sets or whatever one does. And this is the old habits coming back to comfort you and distract you from the suffering. But when you see the giving up one by one, the things along that path towards enlightenment as liberating and giving you freedom that you never want to lose, it becomes so that you can never go back to those old habits. Because you wouldn't want to give up that freedom you've gained from those habits. Just think of the restrictive nature of drinking alcohol as one example, smoking cigarettes as another example, seemingly normal and not necessarily considered unwholesome activities, but very restrictive in all that you can do. Where you can smoke, it's limited. Drinking, what you can do after you've been drinking, it's limited. Most people cannot work if they've been drinking, or drive if they've been drinking. In fact, the only positive for drinking, and it's not a positive, is it enables you to do silly things, daring things, dangerous things, things you wouldn't normally do. It gives you Dutch courage, they say. A little drink to give you some comfort and Dutch courage. I don't know where the expression comes from, but it seemingly dulls the senses. This is the whole point of refraining from intoxicants. The reason you don't want to go there, and you need a drink to do so, is because it's not wise to go there. It's probably moving towards breaking one of those other 4 precepts. Now, when we see this, it's much easier to deal with, much easier to let go. Like the eating of the one meal in the day. I didn't ever see after that time in the first few days in a monastery of eating once a day any point in spending any more time, money and effort in organising, working for, paying for, or going to visit people in order to indulge with them in any more additional meals in a day. In fact, life became so simple I could dispense with breakfast, so I had more time in the morning for meditation, eating once mid-morning or late morning, and the rest of the time was free. All of the things I had to do previously, and the money I had to earn, and the places I had to go to satisfy those habits were gone instantly. And I chose very quickly to keep it that way. And people, yes, thought I was a little odd at first, but it didn't matter. Because they were the ones running around like headless chickens, organising the next meal, even discussing their next meal whilst eating what was in front of them. If not discussing it, probably I should think thinking about it, thinking about what they're going to have for lunch whilst they're eating breakfast, and dinner whilst they're eating lunch, and probably the next day's 3 meals whilst they're eating dinner. When you're hungry, you eat what's needed and what's necessary, and that's it. It doesn't really matter too much what it is, as long as it's nutritional. I saw the benefit in that and couldn't really see the positives in those old habits. The same with drinking, the same with smoking, albeit those have some physical effects and mental effects of withdrawal, which is why I always emphasize take advice on these, but one cannot wean off these things. There may be something to replace in the case of withdrawal to alleviate symptoms, but the weaning off is clinging on to. It shouldn't be called weaning off, it should be called, how much should we cling on to our old bad habits? Think of it that way. So should I wean off eating? Oh, it must be hot in here, I'm really sweating. Should I, it's the humidity, in fact, it's very humid. It's gone very dark outside and it's about to rain, so it's extremely humid, if not that hot. Seeing it not so much as weaning off, but clinging on to those old bad ways makes it much easier to let go of those old bad ways. So this is why overall the bhikkhu, or the person keeping the 8 precepts as a lay practitioner once a month, twice a month, or once a week, is benefiting so greatly from developing that quality of nekama, renunciation. Because by developing that quality of nekama, renunciation, you're practicing, you're learning how to give up stuff, how to let go, how to eradicate desire. Therefore, you're practicing, you're learning how to become free from suffering by taking away its cause. Our cause is not the suffering itself, it's the fuel that keeps that suffering burning, keeps the flame alight. Take away the fuel, the flame will extinguish, the suffering will be gone. So this is why that comment stood out. Should you wean off, say take a little snack here and there? No, you can do it cold turkey, all assuming your health is relatively good, you will not die. You can live for a few days without food. There have been occasions where I've had to, not from choice necessarily, but there's not been much to offer by way of food, some places where I've been, on one day, and even that, it's really not affected me. I've thought, well, this is nice, I've got a bit of extra time. So, renunciation, nekama, something we can all benefit from, learn from, but what I must really add to that is see the real immense pleasure in it. It's not an exercise of asceticism. Oh, look how hard I can push my body. Look how tough I am. Look how strong my resolve is. It's a case of, wow, isn't it nice when you don't do that? Isn't it nice to just stop? And after all, that's what we're doing with a lot of this practice. We're just stopping. We're not actually doing anything in particular. We're just not doing. It's a practice of refraining from breaking those 5 precepts. It's a practice of samadhi, meditation, which is simply sitting, not thinking, not moving, not looking, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And it's a case of letting what we can experience show us the reality of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, and things aren't in our control, as being the very nature of existence, the true basis of wisdom. And it's the most direct path towards that end goal. It helps you keep the precepts. Renunciation, nekama, helps you keep the precepts. It helps with meditation, less on your mind with regards to occupying your taste buds, filling your tummy. Mental proliferation on what can I have next? How quickly does something you really like become boring if that's all you have? Now, I know I've spoken about this time and time again, but I don't think it can be stressed enough that the path of renunciation isn't additional suffering, but it is letting go of bad habits that cause additional suffering for a life of freedom and liberation and focus towards that of the end goal, complete liberation, freedom from suffering, arahantship, enlightenment, awakening. What's not positive about that? That's why you're on YouTube looking for answers, asking questions, listening to this, maybe not. But what to do next when you finish listening to this? Scroll through to the next video and listen to that one. Maybe Buddhism, maybe something else, maybe entertainment, or just try and do nothing. Do you get up, go to the fridge, get something to drink, get something to eat, or do you just simply do nothing? Turn it off now. Do nothing. How does that feel? It's not like having your arm cut off or your leg cut off. You're not losing anything. In fact, you're gaining precious minutes, precious moments to be alone with just the feelings as they are, without distraction of anything else, without fuel to the fire of thinking even. How much do you need to know? Basic education, basic philosophical ideas, if they're helpful. But if they're causing you additional thinking, confusion, perplexity, in other words, suffering, let go of those. Hold gently what's very simple to understand in Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. There's nothing deep about that on the face of it, but there's certainly, when you examine it and you delve into it and through the Noble Eightfold Path practice it, nothing deeper to be found anywhere else than that teaching, the Four Noble Truths. It is the deepest of deep understanding, the true nature of existence. And it's there we find this true liberation from all of our suffering. And after refraining from breaking those 5 precepts, keeping precepts, one of the additional and first steps you can take towards that understanding, to get a glimpse, people often say, well, in Samadhi you can get a glimpse of Nibbana. How do I get Samadhi? But to get a glimpse of Nibbana, you can also simply give something up and understand the liberation of that having given up an old habit. That freedom is also a taste, a fragrance of Nibbana. Okay, it's not the deep, insightful freedom from physical feeling and mental thought that one might get in jhana, but just that moment of, oh, doesn't that feel nice? I never have to do that again. The moment is a taste, a subtle fragrance of Nibbana. And that is what makes it also enjoyable, this practice. As we slowly lose, let go of, put behind us the things that cause the suffering, or build up towards the cause of suffering. Gently but surely progressing towards final liberation, whether it be in this lifetime, the next, or countless lifetimes ahead of us. With that in mind, the process in itself is pleasurable, is enjoyable, and takes away a lot of the suffering that we experience in this life by rewarding us instantly with that feeling of liberation. So why do I sit and live this way, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out now? Because it's the ultimate freedom. Everything is taken care of by way of what is necessary, what one needs within monastic life. And you too in lay life can also experience this on your days off if you have them, but if not, any moments of time off where you just simply stop rather than reaching for the next thing to do or even thinking about the next thing to do. Just stop for a moment, and to help us do that, we just breathe. So before lighting that next cigarette or pouring that next drink, just breathe in and think, now what would happen if I didn't do that? Okay, a little bit of physical discomfort maybe, a little bit of mental torment maybe. But once that mind is made up, that determination, another quality, adhitthana, is made not to pursue that habit, you've embarked on the path of renunciation, nekkhamma. You're building these qualities, paramis, these qualities that have to be established to become enlightened. You cannot do this learning from a book. I'm afraid to say, sitting around, reading the Pali Canon, learning the Pali Canon, reciting the Pali Canon, but on big comfortable chairs with your feet up, watching colour TV and driving around in luxury cars is not going to lead towards enlightenment. It may not stop you, it may not be morally wrong, but you're not establishing the basic qualities of letting go that comes about from renunciation. You know, and this can be seen, this kind of activity. People think that liberation comes from intellectual knowledge. No, liberation comes from all of your actions of body, speech and mind. You don't have to push yourself outwardly, though, extending yourself in all directions, whether it be altruistically or by means of generosity through giving, but by simply not taking, not using, becoming a very small footprint, becoming invisible, and experiencing the bliss in that, amplified in meditation, amplified hundreds of times in samadhi, and thousands of times in jhana. But if you never sit, it doesn't matter if you're in a chair or on the floor, if you're in lotus posture or sitting upright, as long as you're awake in an upright position. I sit like this because it's the most comfortable way for me to sit. But as long as you're not leaning here, leaning there, or leaning back, you're awake, you're upright, you can meditate in any posture, sitting, standing, walking, lying down. But sitting still, something that doesn't require you moving, and upright rather than laying down so it's less easy for you to fall asleep, is the best. On a chair if necessary, but if you never do this, you're not even approaching halfway towards liberation within this lifetime. You may be establishing other qualities of generosity, dana, of gaining the intellectual knowledge and understanding of the suttas, and even teaching that knowledge to others. But this is only some of the qualities that you need to develop in order to be able to, at some point in the future, progress towards liberation, enlightenment, nibbana. So meditation, it's not a magical thing. Someone said in a comment that they were pleased that I didn't talk about meditation and enlightenment like they were so ethereal, magical things that we only imagine and hear about in fairy stories. Well, absolutely not. If I thought that was the case, I wouldn't be here. Because meditation is a very real experience. In fact, it's the most real experience you can have, because it involves no distraction of any kind via the senses. And any distractions of any kind via the senses, whether it be seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or what you're thinking about, is to be ignored in meditation, allowed to come and go, without grasping, without thinking further about, without latching onto. And simply just time spent without using distractions to proliferate with thought, to find something else to do, but to simply enjoy the moment in this present, here and now. With us all approaching aging, sickness, and death, there will come a time that only this practice of meditation will help. All the intellectual knowledge in the world, and all the generosity and other qualities you've developed throughout your life, are not going to help with that moment of pain, that moment of suffering, when however many people are surrounding you, you are alone. We are alone with death. No one's coming with you on that trip. So we understand this from our practice of meditation. And we develop this understanding through renunciation. So I went a little bit off at a tangent there. I hope it didn't sound too miserable and depressing, because that's not the aim at all. I'm really highlighting the joy in that process of renunciation. And you too can experience that on a very small scale at first. Just next time you're going to have an ice cream, don't. Maybe even take it as far as getting an ice cream and giving it to someone else. But that's not necessary. Just don't. Just stop and know you don't need to do that. Next time you go to the fridge, you don't need to do that. Satisfy the body's needs and requirements, not the mind's wants and desires. And this is the true path towards ultimate liberation, to be seen, found and felt in the liberation of renunciation, in each and every moment. With addictions, you will be reminded in each and every moment of what it is you're giving up. You won't be able to forget it for a long time. Oh, I need a drink, I need a drink, I need a drink. Oh, I need a cigarette, I need a cigarette, I need a cigarette. This is your meditation object. This is the power behind that renunciation. See the light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, imagine when I'm no longer bothered by that thought of wanting a drink. Imagine when I'm no longer bothered by that thought of having a cigarette. Think about me. I'm never ever bothered, and haven't been bothered for 15 years or so, about having a drink. I'm never bothered about having a cigarette, or even consider the idea of having a cigarette. That's probably, I don't know, getting a few years less than 15. For a long time, though, I felt that way. You do it a stage at a time, a day at a time, not weaning yourself off. You go cold turkey, you stop, and yeah, you get through the first hour, and it's hard. Then maybe 3 hours, so you've done a morning or an afternoon, it's difficult. You get through the night, you've done a day. That's an achievement, 24 hours. Before you know it, 3 days, then a week, 3 weeks, then a month, then 3 months, then a year, 3 years, before you know it, 10 years, 15 years, the rest of your life, free from that affliction, that tie, the fetter, the tie of addiction. It's not one of the 10 fetters, it comes under desire for something that we want rather than what we need. But has to be cut if you want liberation. So on that note, if you have got something you can give up, please give it a go. And hopefully that's not the case, and you're already keeping the 5 precepts. But there are other things, activities, too much YouTube, too much whatever it is, television, Netflix, other things that we can have. Even, let's say, too much study and reading and this idea and this philosophy and this, even just restricted within Buddhism. People send me books and what do you think of this publication? What do you think of this book? What books can I recommend? I say, I don't read. I'm here to just practice. And maybe some people think that's odd, but why do I need to read? It will be a distraction. You come to know the suttas, having read those when you're practicing, when you're training, and that's as much as we need reference to. The Vinaya for the monks and the nuns, the suttas for everyone. I mean, even the Abhidharma is an optional extra. But the suttas is enough for most of us. I mean, that takes some reading in itself, albeit largely it's repetitive, so we can take various ways of seeing that. But your ideas coming from that understanding are what you put into practice. And anything else you do, picking up a book, finding another talk, it's just distracting from that purpose. So I hope I'm bringing you back towards what you do next, focusing your mind on stopping, not finding something else to do, and just even for a few moments, enjoying those few moments for what they are, free and uncluttered, uncluttered by desire, uncluttered by craving, thirst of an insatiable nature, and freed up for the sheer bliss and pleasure of just experience as it is. So until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.